Welcome to HealthCast. I'm your host, Adam Patterson. We are joined today by Dr. Michael Kelley, VA's National Program Director for Oncology, and Dr. Kenute Myrie, VA's lead for Precision Oncology in the Office of Research and Development, for an interview on how the Department of Veterans Affairs is leading some of America's most groundbreaking lung cancer research. VA has been overseeing efforts to improve both the treatment and early detection of lung cancer, overall improving long-term prognosis and survival rates. With the increasing sophistication of VA's health informatics and usage of breaking capacities like artificial intelligence, the agency's lung cancer research only continues to advance, and with it the health of veterans nationwide. Dr. Kelley, Dr. Myrie, thank you so much for coming onto the program.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And I want to start out with a question a bit about yourselves and to provide some background here. And that is, can you tell us a bit about your career and your research interests and what brought you to your current roles at VA?
Ken, do you want to go first?
So I am Kenute Myrie, and I received my PhD from the University of Michigan and did my postdoc at the National Cancer Institute. From there, I went to work with CDMRP, the Congressional Directed Medical Research Program. That's part of the DoD. That's a program that has a lot of advocates, cancer advocates, who advocate on behalf of the program to address various cancers. And I developed an interest in cancer for a very long time, before I went to graduate school. I'd say it was a natural fit for me after doing my postdoc to work with CDMRP, and I did that for over 7 years before coming to the VA, where I had an interest in working with veterans and addressing the issues affecting veterans. And so here I am as the Senior Portfolio Manager for Precision Oncology in the Office of Research and Development.
And this is Mike Kelley, and I also have my roots at the University of Michigan, where I did undergrad in medical school. I came to Duke University to do an internal medicine residency and started at the Durham VA. I then went to the National Cancer Institute for a decade, where I worked in a lab as a postdoc initially, and then worked as a fellow in training for medical oncology, then stayed on as a staff fellow, and then came back to Duke and the Durham VA in the late 1990s. And I've been here ever since and have been increasingly working on bigger and bigger problems around cancer in VA, in particular around lung cancer, and developed an interest in transitioning to a more administrative role in terms of the executive director for oncology in about 2007, and have been in that role since then.
Yeah, that all sounds fantastic, and it really puts you in a position to help oversee the really broad-reaching research that VA puts together. And that kind of brings me to my next question, which is in terms of, again, looking at the broader public health or healthcare impact here and the concerns about how prevalent is lung cancer among veterans compared to, say, the general population, and what are some of the most common risk factors for developing lung cancer, including, I guess, veteran-specific instances?
Well, the most prevalent risk factor is smoking. So cigarette smoking is by far the largest contributor to lung cancer. About 15% of individuals in the United States who develop lung cancer do not have a strong history of smoking, but in the VA, it's probably a little lower than that. There aren't really good studies showing the population prevalence of lung cancer compared to the general population, but if you look at the smoking rates in current veterans who are enrolled in VHA compared to the population as a whole, they're actually about the same. It's about 11 or 12%. But the former smoking rate is significantly higher, and that combined with the occupational exposures that service members have, it's very reasonable to think that the incidence of lung cancer is higher in VA.
Definitely. And that all makes a lot of sense. Again, you mentioned the obvious and universal risk factor, the one that is most predictive, which is, again, a history of smoking, including smoking into later life. But also, again, I'm imagining some of the respiratory concerns, things like, burn pits potentially being a precipitator. And to extrapolate that one a bit more about among what age cohorts do you typically see higher rates of lung cancer when, including among smokers or non-smokers, do you tend to see lung cancer emerge, or kind of early stage lung cancer typically emerge?
The median age at diagnosis for lung cancer is in the early 70s, so 70, 71, 72-ish, goes up and down a year from time to time. And I believe that the average age of diagnosis is a little bit younger in those who have never smoked. We don't really have good data for those whose primary risk factor is an environmental exposure. So I don't think that we know in terms of burn pits or any other type of service-related occupational exposure what the epidemiology would look like. At least I'm not aware of that.
Definitely, that all makes sense. And to bring it down to what work you're doing at VA in terms of really advancing the understanding and treatment of lung cancer, both, again, diagnosis and oncology, broadly speaking, what research initiatives and clinical trials has VA been using to advance its lung cancer screening and treatment? What have been the really major focus areas of developments lately?
So, Ken, that's a research question. Do you want to start?
All right, so I'll start, Dr. Kelley, and perhaps you can chime in and contribute as well. But it's important to note that, VA has been doing research for over 100 years to address the concerns of and needs of our veterans. And so it is not surprising that we are highly focused on things that are affecting veterans, particularly in the area of cancer. And so in 2020, the Office of Research and Development and the National Oncology Office partnered to establish a long precision oncology program geared towards improving lung cancer screening and providing our veterans access to lung cancer treatment. And this was, and also the opportunities to participate in smoking cessation. We believe that lung cancer screening is important because it will help to improve and do early detection of lung cancer. And then in the farther spectrum, where a veteran may develop lung cancer, there'll be an opportunity to apply precision oncology so that they can get treatments that are directly appropriate for their care and for the alterations that are identified in their tumors. So we have been doing that kind of work. And some of our work involved the application of artificial intelligence and machine learning to look at not only stratifying our patients in terms of risk, but also to look at some of the nodules that are identified from our CT scans to determine who would likely to go on to develop cancer. And so that is important because we want to not only be able to avoid putting patients under unnecessary treatment procedures, but also to be able to say, okay, those that are going to go on to develop cancer, what type of intervention we can possibly action before they develop the disease. And then within the National Precision Oncology Program that we developed, we have over 85 VA medical centers that are participating. And on the treatment side, we are utilizing data that comes from molecular testing of tumors to develop novel clinical trials. And that's quite important because there we're able to match the patient's tumor to the right treatment at the right time. And it also gives our investigators an opportunity to develop novel treatments and novel clinical trials and provide novel therapeutic options for our veterans. And they also gives an opportunity as well to partner with our industry partners who may be able to provide novel drugs for us to test here in the VA. Dr. Kelley, I'll pass on to you.
Thanks, Ken. So I would just have a couple of extensions to that. So first of all, it's really important that those who have smoked or are currently smoking and qualify for lung cancer screening, that they get that screening done. It saves lives significantly. That said, it is somewhat imprecise in identifying who does have lung cancer and who doesn't. And so I think a lot of the efforts that Ken emphasized and described in some detail are important in order to improve the I guess, performance of the screening algorithm. So right now, the screening algorithm is an annual CT scan of the chest. And there are many new technologies, artificial intelligence in terms of looking at the images from the CT scans, but also blood tests and other types of testing that might improve how well the screening works to save additional lives and with fewer maybe false positive tests. Second point I'd like to make is that if you have lung cancer, the opportunity to enroll in a clinical trial is oftentimes the best clinical care you can get. So we don't necessarily know how to cure every patient with lung cancer yet. We have some hope in that regard for a minority of people who are diagnosed with lung cancer, but there's a lot of hope and opportunity to advance to new therapies, and oftentimes those are only available in the context of a clinical trial. So that is something that some of the approaches that Dr. Myrie described would be important for veterans to consider if they are diagnosed with lung cancer.
Definitely, yeah, and that all sounds incredibly promising, and like you're really driving forward the research and the screening capacities that VA is able to provide, and I guess American healthcare more broadly is able to provide. I want to kind of like drill back a bit into something, because you've mentioned that clearly being able to drive these kind of precision oncology programs and engage in this really precise kind of research requires, I'd imagine, a pretty immense amount of data and data feeds to support, things like artificial intelligence in similar capacities. And I'm wondering, how is the information sharing, say, enabled by VA's health record modernization and the sort of general kind of data feeds that are being built? How are those being leveraged, and how impactful have they been towards really helping drive your research forward? Because I'm imagining what VA is able to do now, even compared to 3 or 4 years ago, is significantly more advanced.
Well, let me just talk about the electronic health record modernization. So it's only up and running, I believe, 2 centers right now. So it hasn't had a broad impact on VA research because that's a relatively small minority of all of the veterans who are involved. I think a lot of the advances in the health informatics has come from a number of initiatives that go beyond what is happening in the EHR in general, because the data generally gets transferred out of our current EHR and will get also transferred out of our new EHR into other environments in which the computing can occur, which is more attuned to the research efforts that are not doing standard types of data processing. So they have to get transferred to new environments, and VA has some really nice environments for research. So there's Vinci, VINCI, which is a cloud computing environment to do sort of standard epidemiological and health outcomes type of research, which allows us to identify patterns in outcomes, response to therapies, who lives longer than other people, depending on what treatments they got or what some of their characteristics are. But there are more modern needs in terms of the capacities, and those are being done in other areas that I'm going to let Dr. Myrie talk about, because they are definitely not in the standard clinical space. So there's, I guess, the genetics, so MVP type of environment, and we also have a collaboration with the Department of Energy. But hopefully he can tell you more about those.
Thanks, Mike. So VA has a genetics program called the Million Betterment Program, where we are collecting samples from 1 million veterans and taking baseline surveys from our veterans, and then sequencing the blood samples that they provide and making that data available to our researchers for research, so that we can better improve the health and care of our veterans. And so We have, as a result of that effort, we have a collaboration with the Department of Energy to use their supercomputing capabilities as well as their ability to do complex AI, machine learning, and neural networking analyses of our data, both the genetic data as well as data that comes from the electronic medical record, so that we can look at outcomes and make an association with genetic information and so on and so forth, so that we can learn, acquire new knowledge and go back and do some validation and some clinical trials to establish new evidence for care.
Definitely. And the MVP's work has been really impressive. We've been fortunate enough to have a couple of folks from the MVP onto the program. And it's clear that the support you're getting from the DOE has also been really instrumental in kind of bolstering the computational capacities needed to really bring these research initiatives to fruition. I'm wondering, are there any other wings of the federal government that VA has worked with in terms of collaborating on, say, kind of precision oncology and lung cancer research more broadly?
So yes, we've worked very closely with the Department of Defense and the National Cancer Institute on a project called Apollo, which is the Applied Proteogenomics initiative that's looking at not only the genetics, which we do to some degree in standard clinical care, but also looking at proteins and the very complex protein patterns that can occur, and trying to understand what they might also tell us about prognosis or treatment choices for patients who have cancer. That work has been going on since the first Cancer Moonshot in 2016. There are initiatives in several different cancer areas, and one of them is lung cancer. I think we may be having some other collaborations with the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention around environmental exposures and looking at mutational signatures and tumors that arise in service members, former service members, to be able to try to understand what the etiology of those cancers might have been. And I don't know if we have any others that Dr. Myrie might.
You may recall, Dr. Kelley, that we also have with the collaboration with National Cancer Institute coming up, where we are hoping to collaborate around blood-based markers for early detection of cancers. You want to talk about that some more?
Yeah, so there's a newer technology for cancer screening. So I was mentioning this, alluding to this earlier, in terms of those who have an indication to get screened with the technology we have now should definitely do that, but that there's new technologies which are coming along. And one of the groups of those new technologies is a blood-based test, which is called a multi-cancer early detection test that uses various, there's a whole bunch of these different technologies that are applied to this blood test. But it's not looking at for one particular type of cancer, but it could be looking for a group of them or even all types of cancers. But we don't know whether that type of test improves the outcomes for individuals who are having that test by reducing deaths from cancer, which is the overall goal. That's the goal that President Biden has stated for the Cancer Moonshot 2.0. And so we'd like to know that. And we've been in discussions with the National Cancer Institute and our colleagues at the Department of Defense to partner on a project that the National Cancer Institute has proposed to examine whether those tests are useful and should be adopted more broadly. So that would be a big project. It's in development. The National Cancer Institute has the lead on that, and the VA is quite committed to participate as an active partner.
And I just want to underscore that in order for us to bring any of these tests to market or into the clinic, it requires thousands and thousands of participants to validate these tests. And so that is why the the partnership between National Cancer Institute and the DoD and the VA is so important to executing this analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of collaboration with NCI sounds really promising. And, to wrap things up, I want to ask, in addition to what you just mentioned, are there any other possible initiatives VA might be launching in the near future, or directions you might be taking your oncology research, or any other projects that are slated to launch on the near horizon that you would like our audience to know about?
I will defer to Dr. Kelley for him to talk about the work that we're doing in teleoncology and our virtual clinical trial effort in order for us to bring clinical trials closer to our veterans, and so that we can leave no veteran behind. Dr. Kelley.
Oh, yes, Dr. Myrie, thank you. And that's, I think, a great, you just lobbed that right across the plate. Thank you so much. So VA takes care of veterans across the entire country. About a third of enrolled veterans live in rural areas, which are generally underserved medically and in specialty care, such as oncology in particular. So VA has been utilizing telehealth increasingly since even before the pandemic to deliver great, very expert level oncology care as close to veterans as possible. And we've set up what's called a National Teleoncology Service, which makes relationships with VA facilities around the country to basically take expertise from one VA, which is often in a more urban area associated with a large medical center and a medical school, and deliver that care to areas where veterans are currently underserved. And it works really well. There's a huge demand for it. We've, in a very short period of time, about 2 years, have gone from 3 facilities to 24 facilities that we're serving, and there's a queue beyond that. That has been focused initially and primarily on delivering medical oncology care, clinical care. But as I said earlier, oftentimes the best clinical care is a research study. And so we're using that teleoncology service as a platform on which to build a delivery mechanism so that clinical investigators who have clinical trials could deliver that more broadly across the VA system. So instead of just recruiting from my own facility here in Durham, I could enroll patients from anywhere in the country into a clinical trial, and they would have access to whatever that clinical trial is bringing. So we've shown that we can do that with trials that interact with patients but are not yet directing therapy. And so our next step is to launch trials that will bring new therapies to veterans, and we think we're going to be able to do that pretty soon.
So I'll just add on to that by saying that, as I said earlier, the work that we're doing in research, we're doing it in collaboration with our clinical partners. Dr. Kelley is a major part of that, in fact, a leader of that. And so everything that we're doing, we're looking at not only delivering just new clinical trials, but also taking a look at the standard of care that we currently have for our veterans, are available to veterans, and looking at those to see whether or not those standards of care can be optimized in such a way that it's better for our veterans, given that the fact that they have a lot of comorbidities and they tend to be older and so on and so forth. As Dr. Kelley points out, with teleoncology, that we are trying to reach more veterans. We also developed a national network of VA medical centers around the country that are kind of tied in this network fashion, where we are able to quickly activate our clinical trials into these centers so that veterans can get access to this care. And we continue to expand on that network because we feel very strongly that every veteran should have the options available to them. And we think that by making those options available, it lends itself to equity and therefore reduce disparities in care. And it's important to also recognize that through the care that we give to our veterans. There's a lot of data that is harvested from that. And so we want our veterans not only to participate in getting good oncology care, lung oncology care, but also for them to participate in research as well. And that research, go back to the bench of it, go back to the bedside eventually to help improve their care. And so we are very excited about the dedicated staff we have here in the VA, both clinician investigators and non-clinician investigators who are working very hard every day to ensure that our veterans get the best oncology care.
Definitely, and that all sounds incredibly promising. Again, the merging of your advanced oncology program with VA's increasingly sophisticated, telehealth apparatus, all advancing towards, again, greater provision of care, but also meeting the needs of, greater health equity. That all, again, sounds like an incredibly promising step forward. And again, Dr. Kelley, Dr. Myrie, just thank you so much for coming onto the program.
Thank you very much for having us.
HealthCast, along with GovCast and CyberCast, is a production of GovCIO Media and Research. For more podcasts and to check out the other shows, head to govciomedia.com. Watch out for new episodes released every Tuesday and Wednesday across our shows. You can follow all of them in your favorite podcast platform, and if you like what you heard, make sure to let us know by leaving a review. And if you have any topics you think we should look into, contact us at newsletter@gcio.com.